Part of Teresa's invitation was to respond to the question relative to our research, and I found I had to inflect the question just a little bit in order to be able to provide a more robust response coming out of my research. So the question, and I think it may have already been alluded to, is for me at this point is not should education count, but what should count as education. And I hope some of my remarks aren't too redundant in light of the little video clip that we've already heard. In the elementary schools where I do my research, the prevailing sentiment is that multiple curricular priorities should count as education, and I think we're all familiar with them: literacy and numeracy skills, environmental awareness, civic consciousness, attunement to wider global issues, and so on. And perhaps unsurprisingly, these aspects of what should count as education are almost exclusively linked to children's education. In those instances where gestures are made toward the wider collective benefits of a literate and responsive citizenry, the means to this end are, once again, students and their futures, latent with promise. So when I share my research interests in adult education in elementary schools, the response is typically confusion. And you can see this in the quizzical expressions which seem to suggest that the bringing together of adult education and elementary schools in one phrase is essentially unintelligible. The kind of adult education in elementary schools that I do, and that I think should count as education, has taken shape over these last 7 years and as an extended effort to connect marginalized families and their children's schools through meaningful dialogue, as I mentioned in the video clip, and in so doing shift the focus from A, how to marshal parents and caregivers in the great march toward children's improved classroom performance and higher test scores, to B, how to broaden adult relationships within schools and communities, which, by the way, seems to have some impact on student academic success. The project is now situated in 4 elementary schools in the Greater Toronto area, and as I mentioned before in the video clip, it began as a series of informal forums where parents and caregivers, in-service and pre-service teachers, school and board-based administrators, local community agencies, local politicians, and my university-based research team, namely myself and my graduate assistants, address issues that parents consider pressing in their family's experience of public schooling. Specific issues such as standardized testing, homework, report cards, transitioning to middle or high school, and wider issues such as authority and learning, equity policies, minority languages in Anglophone schools, and intergenerational relationships. In the 3rd year of the project, the parents and caregivers wanted to pursue, as they put it, one or more of these issues in greater depth. They really wanted to sink their teeth into one of these issues, and thus were born parent and caregiver research teams, where small groups of parents and caregivers explore their children's schools and share findings with their school communities. And this year, importantly, I think, the project has evolved to include classroom teachers as co-researchers. And this is proving especially interesting, and I'd be happy to elaborate on it in the follow-up discussion. This, it seems to me, is an instance of adult learning in elementary schools that should count as education because, in addition to generating potentially useful findings in the tradition of applied research, it also generates new kinds of relationships among the adult participants. The parents and the caregivers talk about making connections to their children's schools and beyond. The teachers express curiosity, interest, and yes, trepidation in these research encounters. And at least one of the principals suggests that the research has created, to put it in her words, an alternate culture in the school. On Monday of this week, I met with the parent and research team at one of my participating schools, and we were discussing our chosen focus for the year, which happens to be the mental health and well-being of students. And the point was made that because the school falls under the purview of OFIP, for those of you not familiar with that, that's the Ontario Focused Intervention Program, which provides funding to schools that are falling behind the imagined median with the EQAO score. So essentially they're providing additional funding. And the point was made that because the school fell under the purview of OFIP, there are additional funds in place for supplementary programming. And when I asked if any of the funds could be used for adult or family programming, thinking specifically of the minority parents who tell us repeatedly that they are at a loss to help their kids with school-related assignments, the answer was no. I observed to the team that the literature in this area suggests that minority parents' inability to support their children's academic work can be both a barrier to children's academic achievement and, in reference to our chosen focus, a stressor on children's and adults' mental health and well-being. I share this example not precisely to make the point that the funds for this kind of programming should be accessible for programming related to families rather than only adults, though this is, I think, a case worth making, but to make the broader observation then that when what counts as education is understood to include only children's education, a more context-sensitive intervention that would include adults is precluded. Should education count? I've got here, well, yes, of course it should, but after listening to my colleagues here, I'm not sure I feel so easy making that point. In either event, I think this signals the beginning rather than the end of our discussion, whether we answer this yes or no, and I think we're speaking to this, and leaves us with further questions such as what should count as education. In the case of my school-based research, a rethinking of this question is proving fertile ground for incubating new kinds of relationships in publicly funded elementary schools, and a rich laboratory for examining the psychology and the ethics of these relationships.